The water had been cold, so cold it felt like 1,000 needles piercing my skin as Daniel's hands pushed down on my shoulders, his stripper boyfriend Noah holding my legs. The last thing I remembered was the mocking smile on Daniel's face as the ocean filled my lungs, and then, nothing. Until I woke up gasping in my childhood bedroom, my mother's concerned face hovering above me. "Archie, sweetheart, you're having another nightmare," she whispered, her calloused hands that had worked so hard to give me everything, stroking my hair gently. I blinked rapidly, my heart racing. The calendar on my wall read 7 days before my wedding to Daniel Chen. 7 days before I would make the worst mistake of my life. Except this time I knew the truth. "Mom," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm okay. Just a bad dream." She kissed my forehead, her lips warm and familiar. My parents had loved me so completely, so unconditionally. They'd scraped together every penny to send me to college, celebrated when I graduated top of my class, and cried tears of joy when I announced my engagement to Daniel Chen, CEO of Chen Industries. They had no idea what kind of man he really was. As my mother left the room, I sat up, my mind racing. I had been given an impossible gift, a second chance. But this time I wouldn't be Daniel's fool. This time I would be the one pulling the strings. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling slightly. The wedding was in 7 days. I had 7 days to gather evidence, 7 days to expose Daniel Chen for the manipulative monster he was. And I was going to use every single one. The Chen Industries building towered above the city like a glass monument to wealth and power. I walked through the revolving doors, my heels clicking against the marble floor, and felt eyes turn toward me. Even in my previous life I'd been called beautiful. Delicate features, soft hair, and an elegance that seemed almost ethereal. Daniel had chosen me for exactly that reason. I was presentable. Perfect. Everything his strict, traditional parents wanted in a son-in-law. "Archie." Daniel's voice called out, smooth as silk and just as deceptive. He strode toward me, his designer suit fitting his tall, muscular frame perfectly. At 30 he was devastatingly handsome, sharp jawline, piercing eyes, the kind of man who turned heads wherever he went. He pulled me into an embrace and I forced myself not to stiffen. I knew what those arms would do to me in 6 months. I knew the betrayal that lurked behind that charming smile. "My beautiful fiancé," he murmured against my ear. "I've missed you, liar." "I missed you too," I replied, my voice sweet. "Daniel, I was thinking, maybe we could have dinner tonight? Just the two of us." His expression flickered, just for a moment, with irritation before the smile returned. "Of course, darling. Anything for you. I'll pick you up at 7. I knew he wouldn't. He'd cancel last minute, claiming work. And he'd be with Noah, the stripper he actually loved. But I smiled anyway. Perfect. Daniel canceled at 6:30, exactly as I'd expected. "Emergency meeting with investors from Tokyo," his text read. "So sorry, my love. I'll make it up to you." Instead of crying like I had in my previous life, I smiled. I'd hired a private investigator yesterday, a discreet woman named Sarah who specialized in infidelity cases. And tonight, while Daniel thought I was home nursing a broken heart, she was photographing him with Noah at an exclusive club downtown. I sat in my small apartment. Daniel had insisted I keep my own place until the wedding, which I now understood was so he could maintain his double life more easily, and reviewed the information I'd already compiled. Bank statements showing payments to Noah's apartment. Text messages I'd managed to retrieve from Daniel's laptop. A timeline of every business trip that was actually a getaway with his real lover. My phone buzzed. "Sarah." "Got them," her message read, followed by 3 photos that made my stomach turn despite knowing what I'd see. Daniel and Noah, hands intertwined. Daniel and Noah kissing passionately outside the club. Daniel and Noah getting into a car together. Perfect. My mother cried as she helped me into my wedding suit, an elegant white ensemble that had cost more than my parents earned in 6 months. Daniel had paid for it, of course. Had to make sure his fake husband looked the part. "You're so beautiful, Archie," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're so proud of you." Guilt twisted in my chest. They didn't know this was all a performance. That I was walking into this marriage with my eyes wide open, ready to burn it down from the inside. The ceremony was elaborate. Daniel's parents, Richard and Margaret Chin, had spared no expense. They sat in the front row, Margaret dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. They genuinely liked me, I knew. In my previous life, they'd been kind to me, treated me like the son they'd always wanted Daniel to be. They deserved to know the truth. Daniel stood at the altar, impossibly handsome in his tailored tuxedo. When I reached him, he took my hand, his grip possessive. "You look perfect," he whispered. "So do you," I replied, meaning none of it. We exchanged vows, lies wrapped in pretty words. When the officiant declared us married and Daniel kissed me, I felt nothing but cold calculation. This kiss was different from my previous life. Then I'd been in love, hopeful, believing this was the start of forever. Now I knew better. Surprise. Daniel announced 3 months into our marriage. "I'm taking you to the island." Just like I promised. My heart should have raced with excitement. Instead, it raced with anticipation. Because I knew what was coming. We arrived at the private island resort on a Thursday. The villa was stunning. White walls, ocean views, absolute paradise. And waiting in the second bedroom was Noah. Before we dive into this twisted, reborn, revenge and redemption, emotional love story, if you are obsessed with reborn and revenge stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also comment on the story. And don't forget, this story is an original work of MeBL Stories. No copyrights. If you see this story in another channel, please report that channel for copyright and theft. Now let's dive in. "What?" I started, letting my voice fill with the shock and hurt I genuinely felt the first time. "Archie, relax," Daniel said dismissively. "Noah is my friend. I wanted him to join us." "Your friend?" I repeated, my voice trembling. The cameras I'd hidden in my luggage were recording everything. "Daniel, this is our honeymoon." Noah smirked from where he lounged on the couch, his stripper's body on full display in swim trunks that left little to the imagination. He was conventionally attractive, I supposed, but there was a hardness in his eyes that spoke of someone who'd learned to use people. "Baby, don't be so uptight," Noah purred, and my stomach turned at the endearment. Danny just wanted us all to have fun together. The next 3 days were torture. Watching Daniel and Noah together, their hands constantly touching, their inside jokes, the way Daniel looked at him with genuine affection. Everything he'd never given me. On the 4th night I made my move. "I want a divorce," I announced over dinner. Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. Noah's eyes widened. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the tropical air. Then Daniel laughed. "Don't be ridiculous, Archie." "I'm serious," I said, my voice steady. "I know about you and Noah. I know this whole marriage is a sham. And I'm going to tell your parents everything." The change in Daniel was instantaneous. His face darkened, his eyes going cold. "You won't do that. Watch me." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Noah, go inside." For once, Noah obeyed without argument, slinking into the villa. Daniel rounded the table, gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. "You think you can threaten me?" he hissed. "You think my parents will believe you over me? You're nobody, Archie. A secretary from nowhere with nothing." "I have proof," I said quietly. His grip tightened. "Then I'll make sure you can't show it to anyone." They came for me at midnight. I'd been expecting it, had prepared for it, but the terror was still real as Daniel and Noah dragged me from my bed and toward the beach. The moon hung full and bright above us, illuminating the path to my death. "Please," I begged, playing my part. "Daniel, please." "You should have kept your mouth shut," he snarled, his handsome face twisted with rage. "You should have been grateful for what I gave you." The water was just as cold as I remembered. But this time, as they held me under, as my lungs burned and the world started to fade, I smiled. Because in my pocket, waterproofed and secure, was a recording device that had captured everything. And because I'd sent copies of all my evidence to 3 different people with instructions to open them if anything happened to me. Sarah, my investigator. My lawyer. And Richard Chin, Daniel's father. As the darkness took me, my last thought was, checkmate. I woke up screaming. This time, there was no gentle mother's hand on my forehead. Instead, I was in a hospital bed, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and a doctor was leaning over me with wide eyes. "Mr. Kim. Thank God, we thought we'd lost you. You've been in a coma for 3 days." "Coma?" "But I drowned." "There was a boating accident," the doctor continued. "Mr. Chin and his companion brought you in. They said you'd fallen overboard during a night swim." Of course that's what they'd said. "Where are they?" I rasped. "In custody, actually." A new voice spoke, and I turned my head to see Sarah, my investigator, standing in the doorway. Turns out someone sent some very interesting evidence to Daniel Chen's father. And Richard Chen is not a man who takes betrayal lightly. I could have cried with relief. "Your parents are on their way," Sarah continued. "And you should know, Richard and Margaret Chen want to see you. They've already started divorce proceedings on your behalf and are removing Daniel from the company. They're also, well, you'll want to hear it from them." Richard and Margaret Chen sat across from my hospital bed, their faces lined with grief and determination. "Archie," Richard began, his voice heavy, "we owe you an apology that can never be sufficient. Our son, what he did to you is unforgivable." "We've disowned him," Margaret added, tears streaming down her elegant face. "Both Daniel and that person he was with are facing attempted murder charges. They'll be going to prison for a very long time. But more than that," Richard continued, "we want to make this right. We've rewritten our will. You, Archie, will be our heir. Chin Industries will be yours." I stared at them in shock. "I can't." "Please," Margaret pleaded. "You're the son we thought we had. You're everything we wanted Daniel to be, kind, honest, good. Let us give you what you deserve. And if you ever find someone who loves you truly, genuinely, we'll stand by you. We'll celebrate that love, support it, protect it." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Thank you," I whispered. The law firm of Harrison and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. I'd come to discuss a contract for Chin Industries, now one of the most successful companies in the country under my leadership. "Mr. Kim?" The receptionist smiled. "Mr. Harrison will see you now." I gathered my papers and walked into the office, ready to discuss business. I was not ready for Peter Harrison. He stood as I entered, tall, broad-shouldered, with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. His handshake was firm, professional, but I felt a spark when our hands touched. "Mr. Kim, it's a pleasure," he said, his voice deep and genuine. "I've heard amazing things about what you've done with Chen Industries." "Please call me Archie," I replied, surprised by the slight tremor in my voice. The meeting should have lasted an hour. It lasted 3. Not because the contract was complicated, but because we kept getting sidetracked, talking about books, movies, our childhoods, our dreams. "Would you like to have dinner?" Peter asked as I was leaving, a slight nervousness in his voice that I found endearing. "To discuss the contract further, of course." I smiled. "I'd like that." Dinner became dinners, coffees, long walks through the city, late-night phone calls that lasted until dawn. Peter was everything Daniel had pretended to be: kind, attentive, genuinely interested in who I was as a person. He made me laugh, challenged my ideas, supported my dreams. He met my parents and charmed them within minutes. He met Richard and Margaret and earned their respect immediately. "I'm falling for you," he admitted one night, 6 months after we'd met. We were sitting on his apartment balcony, the city lights spread out below us like fallen stars. My heart raced. "Peter, I need to tell you something. About my past, about Daniel." "I know," he said gently. "I know everything. Richard told me. He wanted to make sure I understood what you'd been through. And Archie, it doesn't change how I feel. If anything, it makes me admire you more. You survived something terrible and came out stronger." He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I'm in love with you, Archie Kim. Truly, completely, forever in love with you." The words I'd longed to hear from Daniel, words that would have been lies in his mouth, were truth in Peter's. "I love you too," I whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. I didn't want to. Our first kiss was soft, tentative, perfect. His lips were warm against mine, tasting of the wine we'd shared with dinner. When we parted, both breathing heavily, his eyes were dark with desire. "Archie," he breathed. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Peter carried me to his bedroom, laying me gently on the bed like I was something precious. His hands trembled slightly as he began unbuttoning my shirt, pressing kisses to each inch of skin he revealed. "You're beautiful," he murmured against my collarbone. "So beautiful." I reached for his shirt, fumbling with the buttons until he helped me, both of us laughing softly at my eagerness. When his chest was bare, I ran my hands over the firm muscles, marveling at the warmth of his skin. We took our time, exploring each other with hands and lips and whispered words of affection. When he finally positioned himself above me, his eyes locked on mine, asking silent permission. "Yes," I breathed. "Please, Peter." He entered me slowly, carefully, watching my face for any sign of discomfort. There was a moment of pressure, a brief sting, and then, "Oh," I gasped as pleasure bloomed through me. "Okay?" he asked, his voice strained with the effort of holding still. "More than okay," I managed. "Move. Please move." He did, setting a gentle rhythm that gradually built in intensity. His length filled me completely, hitting spots that made me cry out with pleasure. Our bodies moved together perfectly, like we'd been made for this, for each other. "Archie," he groaned, his face buried in my neck. "God, Archie, I love you." "Love you," I gasped, my hands clutching his shoulders as the pressure built inside me. "Peter, I'm close?" Me too, he breathed, his rhythm becoming erratic. Together? His hand wrapped around my length, stroking in time with his movements, and the dual sensation was too much. I came with a cry of his name, my body clenching around him. He followed seconds later, my name a prayer on his lips. Afterwards we lay tangled together, sweaty and satisfied and utterly content. Stay, he whispered against my hair. Not just tonight. Always. Always, I agreed and meant it with everything I was. The wedding was small, just our families and closest friends. My parents cried happy tears. Richard and Margaret beamed from the front row, having kept their promise to support my happiness. Peter and I exchanged vows under a canopy of flowers, promising love, honesty, and forever. When we kissed it was real. Pure. Everything my first wedding hadn't been. Daniel and Noah were still in prison, their sentences long and just. I rarely thought about them anymore. They were a chapter in my story but not the ending. Happy? Peter asked that night as we slow danced in our apartment, our wedding rings gleaming in the lamplight. I looked up at my husband, my real husband, my chosen family, my future, and smiled. Happier than I ever thought possible, I replied truthfully. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I'd used it to find genuine love. The kind of love that didn't need to hide, didn't need to deceive, didn't need to be anything other than what it was. Two people who chose each other, every day, forever. And as Peter held me close, swaying to music only we could hear, I knew that this time, my story had the ending it deserved. The happy one. The hotel suite was bathed in soft golden light from the bedside lamps. Rose petals, a cliché perhaps but one that made my heart flutter, were scattered across the white sheets. Peter had planned everything perfectly, just like he always did. Nervous? He asked softly, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder and I could feel his warm breath against my neck. I leaned back into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished. A little, I admitted, but in a good way. An excited way. It wasn't my first time being intimate with Peter, but it was our first night as husbands. Somehow that made everything feel new again, sacred even. He turned me gently in his arms, his hands cupping my face with infinite tenderness. We can take this as slow as you want, he murmured, his brown eyes searching mine. There's no rush. We have forever now. Forever. The word that had once terrified me now filled me with joy. I want this, I whispered, rising on my toes to press a soft kiss to his lips. I want you. Always you. Peter's response was to deepen the kiss, his mouth moving against mine with gentle passion. His tongue traced the seam of my lips, and I opened for him eagerly, tasting the champagne we'd shared during the reception. The kiss was slow, exploratory, as if we were memorizing each other all over again. His hands moved to the buttons of my white dress shirt. We'd both changed out of our formal wedding attire into something more comfortable. He undid each button with deliberate slowness, pressing kisses to every inch of skin he revealed. So beautiful, he breathed against my collarbone. My beautiful husband. The word sent shivers through me. Husband. I was someone's husband again, but this time it meant something real. I tugged at his shirt impatiently and he chuckled, helping me remove it. My hands explored the planes of his chest, the firm muscles, the warm skin. He was so solid, so real, so perfectly here with me. We moved toward the bed, shedding the rest of our clothing between kisses and whispered endearments. When we were both bare, Peter laid me down on the rose petal-covered sheets with such care that I felt tears prick my eyes. I love you, I said, the words catching in my throat with emotion. Peter, I love you so much. I love you too, Archie, he replied, settling beside me and running his hand down my side in a gentle caress. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. We kissed again, deeper this time, our bodies pressing together. I could feel his length hardening against my hip, and my own responded in kind. But Peter didn't rush. He took his time, his lips trailing down my neck, across my chest, pausing to lavish attention on sensitive spots that made me gasp and arch beneath him. Peter, I breathed, my fingers threading through his hair. Please. Tell me what you want, he murmured against my skin. I want to hear you say it. My cheeks flushed, but I met his eyes. I want you inside me. I want to feel close to you. As close as possible. He reached for the bedside table, retrieving the supplies we'd need. I watched as he prepared himself, coating his length with lubricant, his eyes never leaving mine. There was something deeply intimate about this moment, the trust, the vulnerability, the complete openness between us. Ready? He asked softly, positioning himself between my legs. I nodded, reaching up to pull him down for a kiss. Ready. He entered me slowly, so slowly, watching my face intently for any sign of discomfort. There was the familiar pressure, the stretch, and then the overwhelming sensation of fullness as he seated himself completely inside me. "Okay?" he breathed, his arms trembling slightly with the effort of holding still. "Perfect," I managed, wrapping my legs around his waist. "You feel perfect." He began to move long, slow strokes that made me moan softly. His length filled me completely, brushing against that spot inside that sent sparks of pleasure through my entire body. This wasn't rough or hurried, it was lovemaking in its truest sense, an expression of everything we felt for each other. "Archie," he groaned, his face buried in my neck. "You feel so good. So perfect." I clung to him, my hands running over his back, feeling the flex of his muscles as he moved. Our bodies found a rhythm together, slow and deep and absolutely right. Every thrust sent waves of pleasure through me, building gradually like a tide coming in. Peter shifted slightly, changing the angle, and I cried out as sensation flooded through me. "There," I gasped. "Right there, please." "I've got you," he murmured, maintaining that perfect angle as he continued his steady rhythm. One of his hands slipped between us, wrapping gently around my length, stroking in time with his movements. The dual sensation was overwhelming. I could feel the pressure building inside me, coiling tighter and tighter in my lower abdomen. Peter's breathing had become ragged, and I knew he was close too. "I love you," he whispered, his eyes locked on mine. "I love you, Archie. My husband. Mine." "Yours?" I agreed breathlessly. "Always yours. Peter, I'm so close." "Me too," he groaned, his rhythm becoming slightly more urgent. "Come with me, love. Let me see you." His hand tightened slightly on my length, his thumb brushing over the sensitive tip, and it was enough. I came with a soft cry of his name, my body clenching around him as pleasure washed through me in waves. "Archie," Peter gasped, and I felt him pulse inside me as he found his own release, my name falling from his lips like a benediction. We stayed joined for a long moment, both breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together. Slowly, carefully, Peter withdrew and gathered me into his arms, pulling the covers over us both. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, pressing a kiss to my temple. Was it good for you?" I laughed quietly, burrowing closer to his warmth. "It was perfect. You're perfect. Us, it's everything I ever wanted." He held me tighter, and I could hear the smile in his voice when he spoke. "We're married now. Legally, officially, completely. You're stuck with me forever, Archie Kim Harrison." I'd taken his name, wanting no remnant of Daniel Chen attached to me. Kim Harrison. Sounded right. It sounded like home. "Forever sounds perfect," I murmured, already feeling drowsiness creeping over me, safe and sated in my husband's arms. Peter's hand stroked through my hair gently. "Get some rest, love. We have our whole lives ahead of us." As I drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the warmth and security of Peter's embrace, I thought about how far I'd come. From betrayal and death to rebirth and true love. The universe had given me a second chance, and I'd used it to find the person I was meant to be with all along. Tomorrow we'd wake up and start our honeymoon, our new life together. But for now, in this moment, everything was absolutely perfect. I fell asleep smiling, my husband's heartbeat steady beneath my ear, and dreamed of all the beautiful tomorrows we had waiting for us.